Thanks for joining me for the Pray for Micah podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review, and check out my YouTube channel and follow me on social media. Pray for Micah Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to the Pray for Micah podcast. And now your host, Micah Chrisman.
Hello, welcome to the Pray for Micah podcast, where we explore art, activism, spirituality, and our cosmic significance / insignificance. I'm here with Beto Martinez, and he's a climate justice activist, organizer, and we're going to get more into your story and kind of excited to have you on the show. But before we get into that, I'm going to share a little Pray for Micah story. Da, 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 da. Oh yeah, time for a Pray for Micah story. So, Beto, I went this week to meet with a sleep doctor, did a sleep study test, and come to find out, I have to get a CPAP machine.
Oh, wow.
So, it was a humbling experience. I did the study, and apparently I have 28 apnea episodes every hour while I sleep. So that means I stop breathing 28 times an hour.
Wow.
So I go to meet with the doctor, and they tell me these numbers based on my study. And, they're like, well, we're going to, give you the solution of this CPAP machine. And I'm sitting there, and they're showing me all the tubes and, the Darth Vader masks and all the different versions of this thing I could do. And I'm just like, is this what my 30s is going to look like? Is this what getting older and being unhealthy looks like? And luckily, I just got like a nose, setup thing. It's not a full mask, not full Batman mask, but it was just a funny moment of realization that, it's probably worth the investment to have better sleep. It's better for your health, weight loss, all that. But I also realized that, like, they told me, like, even if I lost 100 pounds and did all this, I probably still have it. It's probably a genetic thing because all my family snores. My sister and folks have had surgeries to try to correct their snoring. So I'd like to give myself at least that like benefit of the doubt that, even if I was my prime self, I'm sure it'd be better. It would be less snoring. But I had to take the humility pill. And like I said, like an old man, I'm like, what's next? Hemorrhoids? And,
What comes next with age?
Yeah, right. Like, okay, well, these are the things I will invest in so that I can sleep better and be a better human. So everybody be praying for me and my CPAP machine. And my dog's already like super, sus about it. She's like, what is all this contraptions going on?
What does that consist of? Just a machine, or does it have a
equipment? Basically, it's this little machine box thing, sits beside your bed, has a little hose that goes kind of up into this like headgear thing that I had to buy. And the one I got, it's like less intrusive. I just was like, well, I want to try. I don't want to do the full mask or whatever, but it basically just kind of tightly snugs against your nose, and it basically relieves pressure of when you like, because basically what happens, they were saying that when I fall asleep, my tongue and everything relaxes. And then because I probably have a deviated septum or whatever, it basically starts to block my airways. So that's the 28 times an hour that my body then wakes up and tries to like, I don't get full REM sleep basically because my body is coming out of that REM sleep just to like open the airways. And so what this machine does is it kind of detects as you're moving into sleep, the REM cycle, that it increases like air pressure to be able to like help, like basically it does the muscle action in your neck that your muscle is asleep and it's not doing its thing. Right. So that's my Pray for Micah story, the humility of CPAP machines. So be praying for me.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. It's it's interesting that what you have to do now, right? But you know, you're gonna take care of yourself, and
Right.
it should help in a lot of other ways.
Well, and that's what they were saying too. It's like rather than trying to fix everything about me, like I go to the gym and I'm trying to like get healthier and lose weight, but they were just talking about how like, you know, this might be something that you temporarily do for a couple of years, and if you do lose weight and you feel better in your sleep, then you don't have to use it. But until that, you know, to get that better sleep, then you have more energy to go to the gym, more energy. And so that's why I was like, it's an investment. Just like if it gives me 10 or 20% more energy every day, then it's worth the money.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
I hear you.
That's how I felt about buying my bed. I was like, for the longest time, just having like the shittiest beds that I would just, you know, family member donated a mattress or this or that. Finally, when I moved into like a house, I was just like, okay, I'm going to spend money on buy a brand new bed, because I was like, the investment of just having good quality sleep is probably worth it.
It's important. I think that is the most important part of the 24-hour day, you know, that sleep to keep us going, because I'm glad you're taking care of yourself though.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I figured, well, I have health insurance right now. Better utilize it. I'm not used to it.
And you're fortunate, right? Because a lot of people don't have life insurance, health insurance. I'm sorry. But and so, use it. Might as well use it.
This has been a problem I've had probably for over a decade or more, 15 years. So I was like, okay, I should finally actually utilize while I have health insurance, while I have this privilege, I should just get out there and take care of myself so we can stay active in doing things. And you are an active, busy guy. So I bet, I don't even know how much sleep you get, but I'm going to go ahead and.
I think I'm almost there with you, though. I don't want to take that next step, though, to go find out, you know.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. This sleep patterns, you know, they're not good, you know.
Not good.
Yeah.
Gotta take care of yourself, Beto. You know. Let me go ahead and read so folks can get to know you a little bit better. Beto Martinez is a co-executive director at CleanAirNow. Everybody, if you're on the YouTube side, you can see he brought us some cool bottles, some swag, got some Clean Air stickers. Gonna go on my water bottle.
Yeah, that's our new logo there, new updated logo.
Yeah, it's super cool. If you're on the audio side, it looks like it has like a factory smokestacks.
The people's faces, the silhouette of people.
Oh, I see that now. Wow, that's cool. Also ominous. Climate and environmental justice, it says. Clean Air Now. So he serves there as an environmental justice organizer. Based in Kansas City, Missouri, Beto is dedicated to amplifying community voices in the fight against environmental racism and addressing the systemic exclusion of frontline communities and decision-making processes. His own experience growing up near a petrochemical facility drives his work at the intersection of environmental justice, climate, and public health. Beto is a founding member of the California Environmental Justice Coalition and actively participates in national climate and environmental justice networks such as the EJ Leadership Forum, Moving Forward Network, and the BEA Building Equity and Alignment. In 2015, he organized the largest community-led air monitoring project in the country at that time. Beto is also involved in climate policy initiatives that prioritize environmental justice and community-led research, among other community-engaged efforts that inform legislation. Beto, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we met through our mutual friend, Layla Zaidi, and she just hit me up out of the blue one day. It was like, hey, Micah, I have this friend, and he's doing some climate research in the neighborhood. You live in the Northeast, KC. And I was like, yep. And she was like, well, if it's cool, he's going to come out and set up a monitoring air quality device to check the air quality in the neighborhood. Because I guess there's like also one of the natural gas plants is there in the Northeast neighborhood, but so many other factors I'm sure you can tell us about. Yeah. So I did my slacktivism as far as like I did nothing and you came and set up a device.
Right.
And for a year it gathered data, which y'all are still compiling, you know? So yeah, tell us just a little bit about maybe that part of the project, and then I want to jump into the childhood. Yeah. I want to jump into know who your story is and growing up next to the petrochemical facility.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we met through a mutual friend, Leda Zaidi, a great climate, young activist. I think, she's really amazing. And organizing efforts that she has going on right now, you know.
And she's with Sunrise Movement, right?
Yeah, she's with Sunrise Movement. Yeah, I haven't talked to her in a while, but she's a great leader. And so, but yeah, that's how we met. And yeah, basically, you know, some of the organizing efforts that we do, right, is ensuring that science is also front and center and supporting the community members' lived experiences, right? Because a lot of times community members, you know, want to show up at a decision-making table, give a public comment, and sometimes their story is not enough because a lot of decision makers say, well, you're very emotional. You just show up with your story. However, we know that data supports those things that they're struggling with, what's happening in their neighborhood. And you're right. Like you said, like the air pollution is not just one source, right? You have a lot of sources of pollution. There is a coal power plant. There are many factories near where that monitor was placed for about a year. And so all that contributes also to poor health outcomes. It impacts education. It impacts energy burdens also because we're dependent on that dirty fossil fuel. And then the same people that work there are the same people that live in some of these communities are the same people that are struggling to pay their electric bills, right? And so the air pollution is one of the components that is critical to our movement, because air pollution also is a contributor to climate change, right? The greenhouse gases and other toxic pollution. So a lot of times you hear climate change, but you hear greenhouse gases. But what they're not talking about is the added pollutants, co-pollutants from those same factories that are impacting those communities that are closest to those facilities. And so the monitor, really happy that you accepted. You're like, what is this for? Like, yeah. So that monitor that we have, that monitor that we place in your home, it measures PM 2.5. And I want to share a little bit what that means. That's
totally.
So PM 2.5 is a size of particle. It's not necessarily a pollutant, but is a size. But in that size of particle, there's pollutants that attach to it, right? And PM 2.5 is also it's a size, and there's a standard for this. It's called the Air Quality Index, but it's also a standard that the EPA created. However, we also know that in our communities, people are breathing much smaller particles than PM 2.5, which aren't measured or there's no health standard for. And so what's still important about that PM 2.5 is that we are able to identify, right, these episodic events or exceptional events when there's maybe a chemical release or there's a fire when one of the facilities like just recently happened, and I can share more about that later, or also just how pollution moves throughout the city. So PM 2.5, just let me go back a little more, is very small. You won't even see it because it's like if you get a strand of hair, it's like so microscopic that you won't even see it, right? There's other sizes that are also measured by EPA that are called PM10, and PM10 is that it's a size that you can actually see if you've ever been by a window and see the sunlight coming through and see a lot of just fuzzy stuff in the air. That is PM10. So if you think about PM10 and you think about PM 2.5, you're not going to even see it. And if our community members are breathing anything smaller than that, well, you're never going to see it. And that is where it gets very dangerous, because the PM 2.5 also has an impact to your lungs, the respiratory issues, and it can, get embedded in and also, kids develop asthma through that, or also through long time exposure of this pollutants. Again, remember that I said it's a size, but we don't know all the time what's attached to it. That is additional monitoring that we need to do, additional analysis that needs to take place. But the smaller particle below PM 2.5, those get embedded even deeper into the body, into your bloodstream, and those are very harmful because that. So let me go back. So diesel pollution. You ever seen like a black cloud from a truck?
Right.
That is ultrafine. So that is even smaller than even what EPA measures, and that is the stuff that you don't see the size. You just see like a color, but that stuff is really harmful because that gets into your bloodstream, and you can develop a lot, cardiovascular disease, heart attack, your respiratory issues. So there's a lot of, everyone's impacted differently. Some can also, their skin can have a reaction to certain chemicals. And so this is why it's so important also that as climate change, is getting, we see the climate change, the impacts, and more higher pollution in the metro area in Kansas City. And specifically, our work is really focused in the overburdened communities, right? But as you can tell, lately it's been getting worse, and every summer it's just starting to get a little worse. The ozone is a little worse, and sometimes you might see in the news, right, PM 2.5, the air quality is that. But I do want to share, just for education to the listeners, is that usually the EPA or any of these media outlets will share the highest pollutant concentration of the day. So if the ozone's higher, they're not going to share the PM 2.5 because they just don't have that capability, because EPA also only looks at pollution over a 12-hour period of time. And so our monitors were capturing this stuff in real time. And that is the difference. Even though they're not regulatory grade, it gives us that hyperlocal data that, issues that are happening in our local communities. But, and also the EPA will look at over periods of 12 hours or 24 hours. And then if they see too many episodes, they'll clean it up. And so then again, that data is actually eliminated, right? And that's why some of our organizing efforts is also to ensure that community members understand all this. So a lot of environmental health education, a lot of environmental health organizing, right, to understand the health impacts that are associated to the climate crisis, because in a lot of our communities are struggling, Black and brown, low-income white folks, right, struggling every day. And when you talk about climate change, it seems like, whoa, it's like way out there, right? Well, when we really talk about the issues that are actually impacting them, is when they start engaging, understanding, because it has a direct impact on their family and their health.
Absolutely.
And so the monitors, I just want to go back to the PM 2.5 monitors that we place at home. Those are real time, so they can provide you the data in real time, 5 minute time on 5 minutes intervals or 10-minute intervals. So it's helpful because then once you have that data, okay, well, I can do this to protect my children. I can make a better, a more informed decision throughout the day, right? What do I need to do? What is the best time to go out? But it does take a lot of education on that as well. And so that's just one component of some of the, want to talk about the monitor that was placed. And that's one of the reasons why we placed it there, right? To analyze, to look at this data over time, because we also, we ensure that it's not just looked at just one day or single event or 1 hour, really looking at over time to see the influences in the region of polluting sources.
Not just my neighbor when he's burning his barrel full of trash. And
yeah.
Like, well, at peak time at 4:00, there seemed to be a lot of pollution right next to your house, Micah. Well, there's me either smoking a cigarette or my neighbor. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you're getting a comprehensive, holistic view.
Yes. And that's what we have, a network of monitors in the region to look at all of them over over a period of time, so we can have a good data. But yeah, you're right. Even just having those like fires or somebody burning really close can really impact someone's health. There's community members that a kid has asthma, and they said, once they burn, they gotta like shut the doors, seal their home. A lot of homes are also not weatherized properly, but they seal it because they know that episode might not impact their child at that moment, but it might impact them later in the day or tomorrow. And that's the onset of, of also asthma or respiratory issues, that sometimes you might be there breathing that smoke and you might think, it's just smoke, but you might not develop something till a day or two later because after, everyone's different, right? Some immediately have to get on that inhaler, but so it's all those pieces that are so important to think about, that a lot of times, there's not enough education on those issues, right?
Totally. Yeah, no, if anything, industry, government, they want to be as very minimalistic of actually explaining what this exposure is doing to those communities, because someone's profiting off of the death of these, or the long-term side effects that are like,
yes.
Oh, we don't realize it's costing actually our country. And so all these long-term, we're going to get into it. The environmental hazards, everything is detrimental to our long-term actual financial goals. But in the short term, they want these. And like you said, they put these plants right in the middle of these Black and brown neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So could you share a little bit more about how do you define like environmental racism? Because I feel like we're kind of touching on that with like where they strategically put this. And
So, historically it's been known that, environmental racism is a term that came from the environmental justice movement, really looking at land use policies and practices, right? When we think about environmental racism, is also understanding, right, that decision makers have intentionally put people of color in harm's way. And a lot of it goes back to land use decisions that were made. As you know, Kansas City and a lot of cities across the country have a history of redlining. And that is a form of environmental racism, because they segregate cities, right? And it creates a divide between Black and brown, Latino, Hispanic communities, right? And so it's so important that when we talk about the issues, that we talk about them, what they are, and not just say, oh, it's because they're that race. No, we as an organization, as myself as well, use the words that need to be said, because if we don't use them, then we are part of that problem, right? We need to call out what it is. And so environmental racism is also, that the environmental injustices that people have to face every day, because the same folks, same people, same community members that were already placed or segregated and put in close to these facilities are the same ones struggling with housing issues, energy burdens, education burden, health issues, and shorter life expectancy. So that is a brief definition of environmental racism.
Yeah, they're never going to put a coal plant in Brookside or the Plaza, Country Club Plaza.
Ward Parkway, right?
Right.
Go put it in Ward Parkway. No, believe me, it's not going to happen.
Same thing.
You don't see trucks going to Ward Parkway at all.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought about that. Just, petroleum trucks or anything like that.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the trucks a little bit too whenever we get a moment. But,
well, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, because you literally grew up next to a petrochemical facility. So I imagine that had a big influence on just your call to the cause and to advocate for communities who are, basically subjected to these shitty conditions.
Yeah. No, and that's a perfect segue to the question you just asked earlier about environmental racism. I think, no, I don't think, I know, even as a young, growing up, when I was seventh, 8th grade, and enduring, right, environmental racism, not just from where I lived, but also understanding, I come from a family, that spoke Spanish, and the education system wasn't, very fond of our community that spoke Spanish, right, lived in the east side of the railroad tracks, and just also understanding that, I also grew up near an agricultural community, rural community, farm worker community. So all those things in schools, I see that, how students were treated some students were treated better than others. And I would also see that a lot of people that were brown and Black were treated very different, right? But, I don't think that I really connected all that really into what I do now, how, my activism, how I got into activism. But all those things I remember all those things very vividly, right? How education systems or kids that would come from Mexico, for example, immigrants into the United States, they put them in a lower grade because they were from Mexico. When they were, and I can say that, a lot of the kids, immigrant kids, have a very, what is it, on their math skills are very, it's something that they were very, I think they were knowledgeable, but very on it. And I would see the disparities, I would see the inequities, but really what really drove me into this organizing, and leading this organization here, but also being part of the environmental justice movement, is that when we think about environmental racism and we think about people being placed intentionally in harm's way, I can talk about my story now. So I can. So my parents, growing up, we lived in an apartment in an alley. After that, we moved to a home, substandard housing, right? It wasn't, the best housing, right? But we were happy. We had a home, right? We were kids growing up. We had our own space. It was me, my sister, and my 2 brothers. And then, I know my parents struggled. My parents, my mom used to clean homes. My dad worked in agriculture also, at some point became a foreman and drove the tractors. He used to take me out there with him. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I even out here? And I wasn't benefiting. He just take me because, also needed daycare, right? And so like all these things come, all these things that you experience early on are like, whoa, why is it that we have to do this? But it's still happening today. A lot of our families struggle this way. Where do I put my kid? Well, I have to get a job and all this. So seeing that firsthand, how also my parents struggling. But, when we were living in that home, maybe I can take a step back. I was born in Orange County, California. My family, a lot of them are lived in Mexico. My father was born in the United States. However, they wanted to be closer to my grandparents, and I may have an accent right now. I don't know. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends if I sleep well or have it, If I sleep well, maybe I don't have one. But, this is who I am, right? You're not going to be able to change that, right?
Maybe you have a Midwest accent now since living in
I don't know.
A little more.
I don't know. But I do want to share that that's why, I grew up in in California, and that intersectionality between Mexico and Spanish and Spanglish and all that, right? Mm-hmm. And so anyways, I just want to give that context, that's where I was born. And then because there's people that ask, where are you from? Because I might have that accent, but I know what they're asking. Right. Where are you from? Like, because I'm from California, and they just shut up. That's where I'm from, and they're like, oh shoot, like we can't, because racism is everywhere. Right. And I know what they're asking. It's not dumb. And so, anyways,
totally.
Let me start with the child. So once we were in the substandard housing, like I said, my parents were trying to make a living, right? Trying to provide the best they could to me and my siblings. Great parents. They've done the best they can. They still try. They still there for us no matter what, right? I'm so thankful that they're still alive despite of where we grew up. And I grew up, like you said, next to the petrochemical facility that formulated also agrochemicals, fertilizers, chemicals in the air every day in, day out. And how I became to live, how that happened was that, when we lived in that one last home before moving there, is that my parents had applied to a program that the federal government leads through the USDA program, so the United States Department of Agriculture, for first-time homeowners. So kind of like Section 8, or not Section 8, but maybe like like a more low income, like based on your income, you qualify to be a first-time homeowner. But with that also, there's a term called sweat equity, where also they had to participate in the building of the house. So it didn't just say like, we're gonna you qualify for this home. No, you also got to participate in the building of the home. So I remember hearing that, my parents talking about it, and I was happy. I was excited, right? Whoa, we're gonna have our own house, a brand new home. Sounds nice, right? Sure. Sounds really cool. And so, but before I get into that, I just want to give this thing that we also, like when I talked earlier about environmental racism, we know that our government, right, has been very intentional of placing people in harm's way, specifically people of color. And so, I didn't understand that at that time. I was in 7th grade. I just wanted to, wow, I was just excited, and home, and my parents, they accepted that opportunity. And there we are, along with 10 families building their own home, and the kids coming from same struggles, all of us happy that, we're all working together. I mean, we were 12 years old, and even helping out pour concrete. There was no laws to stop us then, that we're poor and low income. Nobody's going to come and check on us. But if it's some other affluent community, hey, what are you doing? But there we were. But, it was also a moment of embracing our culture, embracing the new neighbors that were coming. We're all around the same age, and parents struggling, trying to have a home for them. And so it seemed really, I'm not going to say that it wasn't something nice. Yes, we were so happy. We were going to have our home, our own bedroom. Me, my sister have her own room. My brothers have, it was nice, right? But with that came a lot of issues, right? A lot of challenges. Because I remember my not knowing that, but then and not even understanding, because I was still in a middle school, right? Not even understanding all those impacts. But I remember every day just breathing this chemical in the air when the weather was a little cooler. The inversion layer would keep the chemicals and the smell of ammonia in the air really low. And the facility was literally 50 feet. I wish I had a photo to show you of my mom, where she's crossing the street and the facility is right in that image, right behind her. And so that also used to be our playground growing up, because we didn't have a playground, right? We had our yard, we built a home, and that was like, there was an empty lot next to the facility, which was also used by the facility, and which was also contaminated by pollution, so the water, the soil, and the air. And some of the chemicals that they would formulate there had already been banned by the time we moved there, and one of them was DDT. So it's one of the most, at the time, it was one of the most harmful pesticides to human health, the environment, and animal, anything that it came in contact with, right? And it's also considered a legacy pollutant. So meaning that kind of a pesticide can live in the environment for hundreds of years. Oh, and there's research that continues to show that, even if you live there, it can skip generations. So for example, a mother that was impacted by DDT, or a family, and their kids might not have it, or they might not be or have a condition, or experience any impacts from it. Maybe their child would, and so it can skip generations, and so
it almost like gets into the genetic code.
Into the genetic, yes, oh my God. And I'll get into that a little more in a bit. And so, growing up next to this facility, seeing the explosions, seeing flaring, seeing water spilled everywhere, just like, just disregard, right? And most importantly, I want to share that, I was really scared for my mom, because, I would go to school, have to jump through the trains just to get to the other side to make sure I got to school, and literally jumping on the trains just to like jump on and run. Me and the other kids from the neighborhood would jump on the train, jump on the other side, and we'll make it to school on time, right? But that's the barriers that we have, right? We didn't have, my parents couldn't take us at the time to school. They didn't have the means to like, hey, just go drop them off at school. Those are all things that you just don't have, right? And so when the facility was there, like I said, there was explosions, there was all this, but what really used to worry me so much, that my mom always suffered from respiratory issues, right? I didn't really suffer from that stuff, but I suffered in the way that just seeing my mom every day. The moment we actually moved there, we didn't know why. I didn't know why until after I left high school, until after I went to, I went to school for public health, got my radiology, my radiography license, and I worked in the health sector for a while, and so. That intersection of public health and climate and environment all just like came together. Like, whoa, there's something much bigger that I need to be part of, because, my mom was suffering for this. I remember I was so scared that, she used to go to the allergy doctor. And a lot of times we think about, oh, these pollution sources are just allergies. But sometimes we got to think about who is the person that is giving that diagnosis. Yeah, it might be the medical provider, but are they looking at the root cause? Where's the harm coming from? Are they asking the right questions? Really scared for my mom. I remember she had a surgery once, and she used to go to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they did a surgery where they had a slice under her like in here, like under her chin and her neck area, to take out like some. It wasn't. I don't think it was cancerous, but it was some kind of a tumor that she developed, right? And I was so scared. That's my mom. We're going to go. And then she said, they're going to cut me right here. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, those things have an impact on a child, right? And, I was still a teenager. I was like 12, like I said, 12, 13 years old, 14 when that was happening. But I remember she always would suffer from respiratory issues. But, I never connected that at that moment, right? I didn't connect it about the environmental racism I'm talking about. I didn't connect the dots that, whoa, I didn't know that. And I think anybody in the neighborhood knew all these issues, right? Like, how is it that environmental racism is so evident in our communities? And how is it that they put us there? We were just happy to have a home, right? That's all we thought, right? And go about our day. And like I said, that place was also our playground. There was a lot of issues. And when I got out of high school, when I went to school, I was still in the neighborhood, and I would go, and my parents still lived there, like I said. But then understanding the public health impacts and understanding more like DDT and understanding the chemicals, the fertilizers, things catching on fire for no reason at that facility. Like, what the hell's going on, Wow. And so seeing all those things really left an impact on me, And again, I'm going to say this, for the audience, it's like, I didn't connect that at the moment. It took me a while, right? I didn't understand all of that because I wasn't thinking about all those issues, but it did leave an impact on me. And I can say maybe 5, 8, maybe it took me like 10 years to get, or like 8 years to started getting involved. And like, wait a minute, something's not right. I got to like, where do I start, right? How do I start getting involved in the community issues, right? That benefit, that can improve our community's health. And so through those processes, being in the public health sector and understanding a little more, I'm going to be honest, I didn't go right away into the activism either. I had my certification for radiography, I had the ultrasound. And so one of my uncles, worked at he was an inspector for a lot of the facilities, like these big power plants. So his role was to go in there. And so sometimes these facilities have I'm not talking about the facility by my home where I grew up, but just in general facilities across the country, power plants, they have these maybe yearly or every 6 months, they have these startup, they call them shutdowns. So they shut down the facilities to check if there's no leaks. I mean, there's always fugitive emissions from these facilities.
Sure.
I can get more into that later. But, he was an inspector, and one of the things he had was a license. It's called non-destructive testing. So what that is that you use ultrasound to ensure that the welds within the facilities and like the vessels and the pipelines don't have any leaks, right? And so, I was in the health sector. He's over there, and he says, hey, would you want to like have like a part-time or work with me when I'm down there in this community or whenever, my extra money, right? And so since I already had the background on the ultrasound, it wasn't hard for me to get my certification around for that specific certification to do that. So, that also opened up more like, wait a minute, okay, there's these emissions here. We talk about air pollution, right? And so understanding all that, like what goes in, what has to happen when these facilities shut down, and knowing that all the regulatory agencies need to be called to ensure that when that shutdown happens, that there's no spills to the soil, no water, there's no added emissions. Before anyone can enter any of those pipelines or any of these, they have to have a regulatory process to ensure that there's no contamination or hazardous waste in the area. And so all those things, I started connecting all the dots. Okay, all right, this all makes sense, And so really that's kind of like where I started thinking, well, I really need to go back and do something in my community, and, I'm going to say in 2000, based on a lot of like historical issues, because that plant, I think it was in operation for like 30, 40 years. And it was called Pure Grow, Chevron. So just for the listeners, it's a Chevron-owned company with a greenwash name called Pure Grow, right? And
of course,
and that is our fossil fuel corporations, right? Greenwashing everything, right? And
these are our green barrels. We put these right next to the playground for the children to swim in and play. Yeah, they're green. We have the word green written on it.
Yeah, and so it's all good, right? It's all pure. And so
can we back up real quick? I'm just curious, how's your mom doing? How's your family? Like, have you had any siblings who had any adverse effects? Like, I know you said your mom had the surgery, and just curious
we haven't seen like those long-term effects, because when the facility shut down, and it's something that I didn't really think about, when it shut down based on community pressure, but also based on their historical violations and all that combined, we were able to get to a place where they shut it down. But then I can talk more about what comes next, though, right? How do you get rid of that facility with so much contamination in your own neighborhood and in close proximity? Because the contamination just doesn't stay at the fence line. And that's when we talk about, if you've heard of living at the fence line, or what it means to be a fence line community, is those communities that live adjacent in close proximity to these facilities. And so I was living at the fence line. I wasn't during environmental racism, but I'm so glad that my parents are still okay, to where they are right now. But I can talk a little bit more about that if you want now, because as we speak, they're doing the cleanup finally, 23 years later, of the facility. Wow. Stuff that's stored underneath the ground, stuff that has numerous different kinds of contamination, dioxin, arsenic. I mean, all the things that can go through a whole list, a lot of stuff that is still harmful for the environment and can be persistent. So now, it's 23 years later, they're doing the cleanup, and I'm very concerned because at that time, my mom wasn't, she's she's about 67 around there, 67, 60, something like that. But at the time, she wasn't 67. She was younger. She was already dealing with this. And now that she's still there, I'm again concerned. And one of the agencies that I can tell you that also the agency that's responsible, I don't want to say they're responsible because I think industry tells them what to do, right? Industry tells the regulatory agencies, you got to do what I say, And so one of these agencies, it's called the Department of Toxics. It's in California. It oversees and regulates hazardous waste. And so, but also, I mean, we have historical documentation inside the institution, really the way they spoke about communities of color, like transcripts of their emails, like using the worst words you can think of, I'm not going to repeat them here, because I'm not going to repeat them for the words that I use anyways, so, but
glad that they were exposed.
Yeah, they were exposed, and again, this is the same agency that's overseeing now the cleanup, the same agency that was allowing them to pollute at the time, the same agency that say, okay, we shut it down, but we're gonna keep quiet for 13 years. The reason I say 13 years is because it shut down in 2000. In 2013, we were able to get the first, and after pushing this agency to get some action to ensure there was a proper cleanup of this site, that we didn't want an industrial cleanup. We didn't want a commercial cleanup. We wanted a residential cleanup. So what that means is that, like here in Kansas City, there's a lot of Superfund sites that we don't want to just clean up the bare minimum where we can just clean up and create a park on top of it or put a skate park on top of it. No, we want the stuff cleaned to the best standards that can exist to protect public health. And so the reason I share that's about this is because as I speak, like I said, they're doing this cleanup. Okay. And, it was about 3 weeks ago, I called the cleanup supervisor and I said, hey, I want to make sure that every day when you're doing something, keep me updated, keep my mom updated. If there's anything, check on them because you're there on the ground. I'm not there, every day. And if you can please do that because, I told my mom, I talked to her. I talk to her often, but I learned that when the cleanup was going to start was after March 22nd. There was a community meeting that said that we're going to start this April, May. It's going to go on for like 4 months, this cleanup. And some of the things that are happening there is that even if the workers open stuff up as they're digging, they got to use all these monitoring before they even can get closer because there's so much contamination that it can interact into the environment, right? When we think about, when we think about ozone and light and how it interacts with pollution, it can create a whole different cocktail, right, of pollution that impacts communities' health. And so right now, that's what they're doing, cleaning up, taking out underground storage tanks, taking out buried contamination. But I'm going to be honest, we didn't get what we wanted. We didn't get it to a residential zoning. We got it to a light commercial zoning, meaning that they might want to put in like a store, or they might want to put in like RV parking, stuff like that. So those are the things we'll have to deal with, later.
Well, but it doesn't surprise me as far as
but it's the continuous fight, right?
Yes.
Continuous fight. And so, the concern was I told them, hey, now that you're doing this, I talked to my mom, and I didn't tell her, like, she it's right across the street. It's not like she can't see what's going on. She's always seen the facility, the machinery after it. Like, they just, they leveled it down. They took everything that was above ground, but everything that's underground is still there. And all the contamination is still in that spot, And actually, there was a stockpile that was from the adjacent property that didn't belong to them. That's what they had there. And so we know the contamination spreads much, much further than just the site. And so I called my mom and I said, Mom, how are you feeling? And, she's talking about, other just things, aches and pains, and stuff like that. And then she tells me, yeah, but lately I've had a lot of allergies again. And I don't know if she had gotten the notice about the cleanup. I hadn't talked to her about it. And so that prompted me immediately to call them and say, hey, because if just knowing that what she was going through back then when it was in operation, and maybe even though it's still contaminated, it was just like there was this stuff producing all the time, it helped her condition. But now understanding that she might be developing these things again, that is what I talk about, where everyone's different, right? Everybody's going to be triggered different. And, my mom might still call it allergy. A lot of community members call it allergies. I'm not saying it can't be an allergy. What I'm saying is that that's the body's defense, right? When there's something's happening, your body reacts and wants to defend itself, right? And so when I mentioned about that proper diagnosis, really got to think about our medical providers also asking the right questions. And also, the thing is, again, if we don't know, we're not going to ask those questions. Well, we're not going to tell the doctor, well, I live next to this power plant. Oh, I live next to a lot of trucks that are always in my neighborhood, emitting stuff. They're not going to share that because the doctors aren't asking those questions. And a lot of times, the language barrier, who the person is asking those questions does not look like you. There's a lot of things that play a big role in how in people's health, right? That we don't have the same resources, underinsured, under resources, and it's known, that a person of color and was being treated by a person that doesn't look like them is not going to understand other struggle, and is not going to treat them the same way, and so all those things. So what I want to share here is that, if, I'm not saying that your doctor's not giving you the right diagnosis. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is always share more than you can. Share what's in your environment, because those environmental health exposures are what have caused all these issues in our communities, brown and black and low-income white communities, and also the pollution, right, associated with it to our climate, right, that is impacting our climate, but is also impacting those same communities. So always just thinking of asking more, like letting them know where you live so they can understand and how to like connect those dots, because the research is there. We think about, if you've heard of the term precautionary principle, is why do you do it? Like if there's no science behind it, then don't do it. If we know it's going to cause harm, don't do it. Right. And so I mentioned that because that's another for another topic later.
But something that you're hitting on, I find this interesting, again, being that I'm finally taking advantage of my health insurance and finally trying to go to the doctor more. And it's interesting how the last question's like, do you live in a safe house or a safe environment? And they're kind of questions that are meant to kind of understand if you are, it's supposed to kind of open up a pathway for them to understand if you feel like they ask questions like, do you have concerns if you won't have groceries in 2 weeks? Or so they have a little bit more like those kind of new, I find that interesting that they are trying to like get a little closer to like understanding like if you are in an at-risk youth or if you're in a household that's abusive, you know what I mean? But it's almost like we need another question that's like, does your environment have toxins? Maybe that's not the. I don't know how you would ask that question, but like, do you feel like your air quality? I don't know. Your
environment being toxic. All those things have an impact on everything,
right?
And I can share examples of, I do want to go back a little bit to the petrochemical thing. Just come back to it in a minute. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
So when we talk about petrochemicals and the formulation of pesticides, industrial applications of pesticides, fertilizers, is that the oil and gas, companies, Chevron, Mobil, I'll even say Evergy because they run the coal plant here. They are, what they use in these facilities, we call them petrochemicals because they're all oil based as well, right?
Right.
And so they're like I said, the owners were Chevron, so it's like this is yet another avenue for them to profit, right, and harm the communities that are closest in proximity. So I just want to make sure that the audience understands that the petrochemical association into the pesticides applications. I've been sprayed on. I mean, I've seen applications like spray on us. And I remember even as kids, we'd run because it was cooling. It will cool you in a hot summer day, right? And just like running, So there's a lot of history on that as well of how harmful this is, these pesticides, and to the body, but also to your nervous system, to your every part of your body, the organ of your body. Even the way you're. I've seen people develop. I can't think of the name right now, but You know, even with not arthritis, it's worse than that, right? Where they can't function anymore, you know. So these things, yeah, to your point, this is toxic. These environments are toxic. And I do want to share that as you're doing this cleanup, there's another added burden that is placed, you know, because I'm very concerned for my family. You know, I'm going to go visit hopefully soon, just to like go see what's going on out there. But I also want to share that, again, the transport of this hazardous waste as they're taking it out is being shipped across the state line to an indigenous community in that native land.
Of course.
You know, and this is not from the only place. You know,
probably right into a water source, you know,
near a groundwater and all that. And there and where I grew up, it also impacts the groundwater. So they have water wells, and they monitor them regularly. They have been monitoring them, and they've found high levels of contaminants. So it impacts all those pieces, you know. But I do also want to share, I think to your one of your questions earlier, what are the impacts that I've seen in my community? You know, like I said, sometimes it can be before somebody develop or has a long-term disease from associated to some chemical. It can take years. It can take 5, 10, 20, and there is research that depending on what contaminant it is, how long that would take, right, for someone to develop cancer, for example. You know, some say 60 years, some say 50 years. But is that still okay? Is that should be allowed? No, it shouldn't be allowed.
Right.
Why is it that we're allowing this, right? And there's facilities in the area called, and I'm going to just say it, ethylene oxide, which is one of them, that they have a lifespan of 60 years, right, before you get cancer. But if you're living there every day, day in and out, and this chemical that's in the air, it doesn't, it stays in the air. There's nothing can hold it back. Like it can just go through that window and you cannot hold it back. And it's in our environment. And so we're actually pushing right now EPA for a better regulation, a regulation on it, not a better one, a regulation on that. And the reason I just mentioned that real quick is because I want to share, go back to the research. I know I jumped into ethylene oxide as something that we're actually working on right now, but a community member, like I told you, the mom, when we moved to our home, there was these homes that were already there, right? And they've seen stuff historically way before I did. They, would share stuff with me too. And like, yeah, we have this stuff happens. And even when we were organizing, they were already retired. Folks wanted to get involved because they knew we need everyone at the table, right? We don't just need like the young folks, because the old people know all the historical stuff. A lot of our young people are like, yes, we want climate change and we're going to win and we're winning. Yes, but it has been a struggle for so many years and we need everyone there because we learn also from them, right? And I want to share that the families that were already living there, in particular, there's one that I want to share this story. It shouldn't be me sharing it. I shouldn't be speaking for them. But I want to share the impacts, like I said, that it has when it skips generations. There was a family there that was growing up. And I think, when I was already out of high school, they moved out. Their house was still there. It was still their home. They moved out. Their daughter moved back into that home, got a loan, whatever they did, but they came back to that home and it made it look really nice, like what do you call it when
rehabilitated?
Yeah, rehabilitated the home. Yeah, made it a nice home, right? Yeah, got a loan, whatever. It's not my story, but I want to share it because I want to talk about how those impacts are still felt way later, right? Mm-hmm. And so she moved back. And I'm going to be honest, her parents are still alive. She passed away maybe, I think 10 years ago with the cancer, with a direct link to DDT. They found a direct link to DDT, even though it was already banned.
That's
they found that the research found that they did on her as well for her cancer, found a direct fingerprint to DDT. And so, when we were at a public meeting, a public hearing and listening to her daughter speak on that, because I told her, hey, we're mobilizing to continue to get this out of here. We don't want this because the harms are still there. A lot of community members have had cancer, and we can't say they're all attributed to the specific plant, but all of those that have lived there in the last 30 years,
right,
could have been exposed to that in our environment and and our environment, the environmental the environmental hazards that exist around us can predict pretty much somebody's life. We talk about environmental racism. You know, you might have heard the term social determinants of health, which is very like everywhere.
It's very public health speak.
No, that is environmental racism, because if you look at social determinants of health, they say, well, it can predict someone's life. No, that is environmental racism. You know, it's just another term to make it sound a little better, not so harmful, but really that's what it is, you know. Gotcha. And so when we think about that issue, you know, of how she passed away, and the direct link and the research, and knowing that all our community has suffered one way or another, you know, this is really what drives my work, that drives at the intersection of all of this, because it's not just where I grew up, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. A lot of communities, everywhere across the country. But
that brings up to the point that there was just a big fire here in Wyandotte County with the metal recycling plant, and you all were featured in that on KCHB news article about CleanAirNow, and like basically exposing that there's this whole chemical toxic fire that happened, and everyone was smelling all these toxins in the air, and there was this big, and of course I'm sure they were slow to put it out, or you know, to deal with it. But then you all kind of in the article, it shares how you were exposing and sharing how like everyone in this community, actually we've been dealing with stuff like this for decades, and it's just, if you could share a little bit more about that experience, because that because I know all this is because you got a lot going on. You have stuff back home. 23 years later dealing with that, but then you're also fighting things here in Kansas City. Trying to deal with the and so that has been, you know, and I want to share a little bit, go back a little bit on that before I get into that. You know, the organization CleanAirNow, it really was formed by a community activist, a young woman, you know, also dealing with similar things, you know, like I shared from other stories, you know, and she started mobilizing her community in Armadale, Argentine, the Turner areas, because of the impacts of the diesel pollution. All right. And that was back like 2013, 2014, really grassroots efforts. Right. And when we talk about environmental justice and grassroots organizing, has all those elements again, you know, because, you know, it was, okay, how do I do this? Somebody supported her to do some monitoring around that time, around the rail impacts, the pollution from the rail. And I want to be quick on this. I want to make sure that I let the readers, the people know that it's not me who's like took on this organization when I moved here. No, it's historical, and I've known her for a long time. So we're friends. We've been friends for a long time. That's cool. And she started mobilizing her community and asked for some support from other ally of mine that he also passed away a couple of years ago. He's an older gentleman, passed away, but he supported her in the air monitoring stuff. But we were not doing PM 2.5. We were doing specific. At that time, we were doing specific pollutants. So really sophisticated equipment. I mean, we still have all that equipment, right? We use that at times as well. But we used they were using this equipment, and they found that really high levels of this pollution could kill people, right? Community member, then she started organizing because they had the data, they had the analysis from filter-based monitoring, and started mobilizing and doing environmental health workshops and all that. Also opened the opportunity and pushed EPA to do a study in the Argentine Armadale area called the KC Track study. The only issue with that again, government, right, always wanting to exclude community. You know, the organization at the time said, hey, well, we want this study, and they agreed. And this study happened recently. It happened between 2017 and 2018 during the previous administration. But what didn't happen is that they didn't consult the same people that told them about this study. The same community members that said, hey, we want this. They didn't consult with them when they were placing their monitors. So they placed them really in an area that didn't really tell the impacts of living at the fence line. It told the impacts within the industry, but not associated to the public health concerns and issues that our community were dealing with. So just a little bit of background: 2017 and 2018, it became the CleanAirNow, the organization. So it's taking a lot of
a long time to get to where it is. But I do want to acknowledge that that young woman organizer, she's my friend, and I'm going to continue her legacy here, with her, alongside with her.
Absolutely.
And so that's so important to us too, because in the movement, we need to acknowledge, those that have been doing this for a long time. She is involved she is involved at some point, at some, not to the extent where I would love for her to like be there right with me, but she's still involved in the organization. And to me, that's where, also it drives that importance. She's a friend. She has dealt with a lot too. I'm not gonna get into what has happened, but it's been a lot that she has to deal with. And, and just knowing her for a long time is so important to continue that legacy. And so now the organization is we have 3 staff now, So, but now let me get into the story about the recycling facility. So the work started, like I said, back then around environmental health. But, once community members know, you can't just disconnect the issue of, it's just the trucks. Oh, it's just the rail. Oh, it's all the industrial facilities, all of it combining, and all of the data that we're gathering, identifying specific pollutants from different facilities inside their, like in their home, in their property line, saying, well, there's something bigger than that, just looking at the rail, even though the rail was also impacting their homes. They were finding like black soot on their table. If you're finding it on your table, you're breathing that stuff,
Wow.
Finding the window panes. A lot of community, and you got to remember that a lot of those same community members that work in the rail or also immigrants. They work, hey, come here. If you want a good job, come to the United States and we're going to give you a job. They're the same people that built the industry, are the same people that are struggling. They're the same ones that built it, and they're the same ones that they kept there, to struggle with all these environmental health exposures. And so, when we talk about this recycling facility, like you asked, we did a tour on April 13th. And even before April 13th, I think it was last year, and before that, community members have been concerned. We have a network of monitors, like, the one we place at their home, we have a network. And it all happened through environmental health workshops and trainings, and community members being part of a mapping activity, looking at all the facilities, but really focusing on where is it that we need that's going to protect our health, because we know the polluters are there, but where do we need this information to help us think about how do we use this for political or policy change, right? And so, or land use decisions or regulations. And so one of the things came up was that the recycling facility in Armourdale. It's a big facility. It's called Advantage Recycling. And they have a facility there. They have and then like 3 offsite shops in the area. But this is not just like plastics and aluminum cans. This is industrial heavy duty stuff, and last year we did a tour. We brought the EPA that when she was recently appointed the Region 7 administrator for EPA. In her first 2 weeks in her term, we invited her. She met with us in the community, and we took her to some of these spots. And we took her there, and she saw what was happening. And she goes, "Oh, we were there not even 5 minutes." And she, "I can't. I gotta leave. I can't. This." Like, I'm breathing this stuff. I can't deal with it. Like, it was too much for her.
Need like a Chernobyl suit or something.
Yeah, like, it was too much for her. So I gotta go because this. But that's the thing, right? Our communities can't get up and go. You can't,
Right.
And so that happened at that time, and we followed up with EPA and said, well, we need some enforcement, some action. We also put out a report back in 2021 or 2020, I think it's 2021, called Environmental Racism in the Heartland, and also. We know there's more than the 10 polluters that we listed in that report, but those 10 have been operating with violations, out of compliance to even the worker health and safety, and to the environment. And so when we talk about the recycling facility, I just want to give some context. It's like you said, it's not like it just happened all of a sudden, right?
Right.
We knew something is going to happen someday, and community members know that things happen every day. An explosion here, a boom there, a fire here. They put it out, boom. They're always hearing things. They're always dealing with some impact from it, right? Every day. There's not one day that they don't hear something happening there. They're concerned. They are concerned because along the recycling facility goes a lot of rail, a lot of rail that carries a lot of chemicals, and that fire that day. I want to take it back. The tour that we did in April 13, we had EPA, Department of Justice, community members, USDA, HUD, some of the local government offices were there as well, and community members. And we did this tour, and we drove through some of these facilities, the industrial corridor all the way between Kansas and Missouri, out to Delalam across the state line. And there were things happening in real time. I mean, this facility there was a pile of about 100, I don't know, maybe 50, 100, but it just, to me, knowing, doing a lot of work on hazardous waste and toxics, I just share very superficial, the stuff I've done. But I saw, when we're in the bus, we saw about, I think maybe about 50 of those 50-gallon drums in the facility just there. And I'm like, hey, you need to make sure you know what's happening, what's in those tanks. They can't just be accepting tanks, because they could be hazardous waste in there. And that's supposed to be going to a whole different facility. It should not be placed near a community. I mean, they're already being burdened by all the pollution there, because as they're crushing all these things, there's lead being emitted into the air. We think about lead, we think about, it's in the water, it's in our paint, it's in our air as well. And these are the same communities that are struggling, right? That they say, we need lead remediation. Yes, we need that. But there's also that other added culprit in their communities that they're breathing. And we know that because we know that that lead is also emitted by a lot of heavy metals. And so we were seeing all this, and I told you, you need to you need to make sure you come back and inspect this facility, because that should be going elsewhere. And also just the transport, just the mess they have there. It's pretty bad with the operations they got going on. That was April 13th. May 19th, that fire happened, right? Guess who mobilized? Called EPA. We called EPA, hey, you need to go out there and take some monitoring, some of your regulatory expensive monitoring, place it out there, and measure what's happening. You might not have that analysis. They might not have it right away, but at least that we can know where those exposures, right? Short-term or long-term exposures that can happen associated to those toxics, because recycling facility fires are some of the worst, because it's burning everything from plastic to gasoline to everything that you can think of. That's the worst of the toxics in the air. Yeah, and this fire started at 5:30 a.m. They didn't put it out till 6:30 in the afternoon. Okay, and so I know some of the images on the news look like it's just a pile and it's just smoke. No, that thing wasn't just like that. It was 12 hours of community members constantly, dealing with it. The thing is that, like I said earlier, our organizing with a young woman started back when it started was Argentine Armadale area, because of the impacts of also the winds, right? We have a lot of southern winds. So a lot of that, instead of staying just localized in Armadale, it also the winds pushed it towards Argentine. And so Argentine was the ones where it was happening. Yet, I want to share this, that there was no notification system to the community. There was nobody going out there to doing welfare checks on the community if they're okay. I mean, in some places, if it was Ward Parkway, it was Brookside, it's not going to happen there. But if it were to happen, even if it was they're going to evacuate and say, we got to do this, and they're going to go check. There was none of that. Johnson County sent an alert to their communities like 7:30 a.m. Yeah. 7:30 a.m. Okay. Wyandotte, nothing. The first thing that came out on the Wyandotte on the website was at 2:30 in the afternoon. 8 hours over 9 hours after the fire started. And that is what I talk about: environmental racism, environmental injustice. Like, totally. I mean, it's already evident, right? But yet, our own public health departments or agencies that are tasked to supposedly protect our health, right? Not that they do. They didn't have anything in place, and so that fire really, it had an impact on the community again, because we have, a lot of the community members saying, this is not every day. We are concerned. We used to see things 40 years ago from the industrial corridor over here, clouds of pollution. People are more aware, now too, even though they've known all these things. And that's what I mentioned earlier, it's not just the young activists that are now fighting and we're getting all these wins, but the people that have lived there longer have the historical knowledge, right? And when we talk about fence line communities and expertise, that is the expertise that's not shared in other places, right? Because supposedly our decision makers are the experts, but they don't live in those same communities. None of them live there, so they're not part of the generating sector or the public health sector. and they're there making decisions for us? No, and so that's another word we use, like fence line expertise is so important. And then like the community, like research that we're doing, the air monitors, why it's so important to have that, right? To push for policies or investments or anything that can put direct benefits into the community. But that right there, that fire, it was pretty bad. And I can tell you since then, there's been additional fires. And I think one of them also happened there again. It didn't last as long. Maybe it was like short term, but community members are concerned. They're like, yes, we are concerned. There's no notification system, and we are actively organizing and figuring out what is the best way to do this. And we're not going to wait for our health departments or local governments, because the inaction from them is evident. They don't care about people of color. They don't care about those living in the industrial corridor.
Like you said, it probably made news and got more exposure, because when Johnson County is alerted, a community of mainly affluent white people, that's like, okay, well, these small fires, we don't have to cover that again. That's old news. That's just just localized to, again, it's not localized. We know it's still going to impact everything going around in that area, but it's not until white folks are basically impacted by it that it makes like big headlines, and everyone's like, wait, are my kids safe here in Johnson County on the playground today?
Yeah, exactly.
With this toxins and okay, it's back to just affecting that community.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right.
It's all right. We can go back to business as usual.
Yeah, and I wanted to share that, when we called the EPA, also immediately contacted a representative for the armored area so she can be aware of it. She was. I mean, she does. She's in the area, but also the news, and get them all. Like, we're gonna get this out there right now. So because not everyone has Twitter. Like KCK Fire Department put it on Twitter. Community members that speak Spanish or don't even have, some of them don't have the technology, that not waiting to look at Twitter, right? And so that was so important. It was like, we got to get this in the news, in the Spanish, wherever we can, any outlet, and also share about the air quality exposures to health, because I saw that in the afternoon tours, like in the afternoon of the incident around 4:30, even the EPA said, oh, the air quality is okay now, blah, blah, blah. But the Canada fires are impacting our community, so that they're quality. And again, is always pointing the finger elsewhere when we have a culprit in our own community. We have our own local issues, but they want to focus on. And yes, I'm not dismissing the fact that the fires in Canada impact community members. I'm not dismissing that. I'm not dismissing that when the wildfires in Colorado or New Mexico can impact. I'm not dismissing that, but they rather look elsewhere first, instead of looking, what is it that we need to do here to enforce the laws, to ensure that our communities are safe. And when we talk about that pollution, they rather look elsewhere. And so those are things that, are very clear for us. Like, wait, we're not here to make friends. We already have all our friends. We already have our allies that we're here for doing this stuff, So
that brings me to a question that's been kind of brewing in my head during this conversation. Like you said, probably you don't have what you would consider friends in the EPA or in these regulatory agencies, but there are people that you have to solicit to get change done. But like you were saying even earlier, where they might come in, even if the community forces their hand and they come in to do an industrial grade cleaning, but not a residential level cleaning. So like, how do you navigate that when you're trying to move forward legislation, when you're trying to how do you build those alliances internally and hope that are you going to actually do what we say, or are you going to just do the checkbox level of work?
Yeah. And I guess let me go back. Yeah. When I said about making friends, I'm saying it's hard to make friends when you're writing for the right things, right? But what I'm saying is we have, a lot of support for all this. And I'm going to be honest to you, that day I actually, I did talk to my friend who is the Region 9 EPA administrator. She is a friend. She's an ally. She's a friend and known her for a lot of years. So it's not like we don't have friends inside, And I'm going to be honest that even when it's nice to hear that even when the EPA, the lead guy, contacted this team, hey, you need to go out there and dispatch some air monitors. A lot of times they do it within 24, 48 hours. This day, the person that was inside, he just started there. He's a friend of mine too. He says, "Oh, this is probably something cleaner knows good. We got to get this out there quick." So yes, we do have allies in there. I've also worked on legislation that support those community members, those issues, right? Whether it's a civil rights legislation or around or land use legislation or air pollution legislation. I have also worked with that. So what I'm saying is we have found those legislators that are actively willing to move stuff forward to protect their communities, because we have also, there's a lot of them that also come from the same struggles, right? And I can say that I haven't found a lot here that come from the same struggles though.
Sure.
But we are pushing that as well. We are moving forward towards those conversations with some representatives, and sometimes, we need to look outside our local representation, because it's so influenced by local politics that it's very difficult. So, we are actively identifying what is those policies that we can look at to ensure there's some benefit, but also attach it to some investments. The tour, like I mentioned, the Justice 40 tour that we did on April 13. I know you didn't ask that, but it was part of like what I was referring to. And I think that article covered a little bit about that. That Justice 40 it's an initiative. So Justice 40 is an initiative by the federal government that 40% of all federal money, almost all of it, like from DOE to EPA, USDA, and HUD, on housing and all these issues, for legacy remediation of pollution, like some of the stuff we're talking about, that 40% of this federal money from the bipartisan infrastructure legislation and the Inflation Reduction Act, that 40% of that money should be invested in the communities that are most overburdened, right? So we did that tour that on April 13, where we had DOJ, we had EPA, we had representatives on the bus tour with us looking at all the impacts, right? So we do have those allies and those friends that they're like, you know what, we need to work together. And so we are moving in that context. What I meant by friends earlier was, not a lot of people like the why you pushing for to protect the poor, that's what they'll say,
I see.
like we don't need
the real outsiders.
Like
I thought maybe there was like government agencies that are just like,
they
get annoyed and they're like, just fuck off, and we're trying to.
There are. I'm gonna be honest, and I'm being very transparent, and I'm very transparent. Like, that day I sent an email to the local government in the area, and I said, what did you do for the community? Did you go door knocking? Why is it that it took this long? Why is it that the closest fire hydrant is that far away? Why is it? Can you answer? And I know they didn't like that. I know. And I didn't just send it to them. I CC'd them and a bunch of other people, because we have to call it out how it is. And I know they're not happy, and it's okay. I'm not trying to make them happy. We want to make sure that they're doing what they have to do, right? If not, we're part of the problem. We're not calling them out. We are part of the problem. Disrupting environmental injustices is pushing it at all levels of government, We're not here to play games. We're not here to like, hey, well, okay, well, give us this and we'll do that. No, you know what? Yeah. We're not here to be part of the status quo either. And so
you can't hide behind ignorance.
Yeah.
At that point, you're just like, well, at least now
Yeah. And so, like the fire is an example. We've been talking about this happening. Go inspect this facility. Now it happens. Now they want to enforce. Now they want to go see. But after something happens, always after the fact, right? But I do want to share that, what is it? The Justice 40. Even in that event, we had the Kansas City mayor at our event. So we did the tour, and then we had a briefing around what that means, Justice 40. We had it at the Dallas Lamb in Pendleton Heights Community Center, and we had Emmanuel Cleaver there. We had a Representative Oropesa from Armourdale there. We had Christina Haswood, an indigenous lawmaker from Lawrence, in our meeting. We had someone from the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council who are advising, part of a council that advising the administration directly about all these investments. And so we have allies here on the ground at the federal level, so at all different places. So it's, to your question, yeah. So we do have those trusted, they might not be able to do everything we want, but they can support somehow. And I don't want to get into it just in case, but they can try to be our friends. So and we know a lot of times their hands are tied, but, a lot of those relationships are so important because all of our allies that are inside the EPA come also from the movement, So we have like a deep, understanding and connection to why is it that we are pushing for this. So inside, they're actually advocating for the same community. So we do have a lot of those allies. So we also had a representative from a different conservative state. Well, whatever. It's what it is. Yeah. That was at our panel because she put legislation forward. They drafted legislation to ensure that 40% that I talked about does make it to the community, that there's oversight with community and local government and even the federal government that has this money, that there's oversight. Not saying that they're going to say, well, this is that they're the ones that are going to approve the grants, but that there's oversight of where the money is spent. So, we had a good event. We had Emmanuel Cleaver there, like I said, and, Kansas City, Kansas mayor did give us like a proclamation of that day. And so did Emmanuel Cleaver's office, but we don't stop there. That's just a piece of paper. Well, you got to like do the actual stuff, right? Like do what, the paper is just one thing. It can burn. It just doesn't mean anything, but it's just creating that strong foundation and allyship. And I think
strong grassroots component that
and
keeps
lot of times,
the follow-up happening.
Yes. And a lot of times, the best relationships and things come out of hard conversations with folks, and I'm going to say, I might not be an expert in everything, but the expertise, knowing where I grew up is what drives me, and it's in that expertise, living at the fence line of all these issues is not just me. It's a lot of us that are living this. A lot of people are living this.
It's your lived experience.
The lived experience, how it pushes you to like, wait a minute, this is not right. And I got to step up and do what's right for my community at all levels. So I always ensure that people understand that the fence line, you cannot do anything without fence line expertise. Whether it's that land use decision, that new building, whatever it is, you need them at the table because they're the ones that are going to tell you the real stuff, the real, how to address the best solutions to address the problems. Because our local governments, they're not educated on a lot of these issues on the generating sector. We live the energy burdens. They don't live through these housing injustice, have lived through housing injustice. They don't live by a Superfund site. I have lived by a Superfund site, or being impacted by air pollution, by the rail, by all of this, so it's so important that community members also, part of our workshops is ensuring that the data support, like I said, supports that, but where they're equipped and say, we're ready to be at that table. And so that is a lot of the organizing that we do, ensuring that they're ready. So when we're there together, that they're listening to them. And that's powerful because we're building power. And we can't, and it's a lot. We're a small organization. And I know that even my team says, you just keep going. But, it's something that drives me, and it's something important that we have to do. It can't be in every single thing I want to, but I can't, it's like, but I'm watching, and where I see, okay, there's something happening. And if I can jump in, and I'll say, I got to go, I'll be there, And so if all the activists in the room are listening, I'm here with you all, I'm there and I'm watching and I'm paying attention because all those things intersect with environmental justice. All the issues that we're dealing with intersect. But like I said, our focus has primarily been where the organization started, because that's where it started. That's where the grassroots efforts, and that is the foundation of our work. We have weighed in also on the climate plan in the Missouri side. We have even on general plans, we've participated, like Armourdale General Plan. So at all levels, we do it at all levels, whether it's just education, even like education with youth around air pollution and the science behind it. So we are in all different, not applications, different disciplines. I don't know if that's the right word either right now, but but we just can't be everywhere, and I know that there has been groups that reach out to us, hey, and I'm like, we want to, but I just can't. We don't have we don't have the team. We don't have
stay focused.
We got to stay focused. One day we'll be able maybe to do that. It doesn't mean that we don't want to. It just means that there's a lot of trust building relationship that needs to happen. And the other piece is that I want to share this because it's very important, because I think for the audience and just a lot of people out there, environmental justice in the last 2 years has become a very like buzzword, just like equity was in 2020. And a lot of people are gravitating, we are environmental justice. We work on environmental justice issues. We are an environmental justice organization. And so what I'm trying to say is that a lot of groups have said, hey, can we write you into this grant because that'll check our box for this application? And like, no, you have never supported us. You have never been there supporting those that precede me, that reform me, you never supported them. But now that there's this environmental justice priority, which we don't wait for the administration. We'll be doing this with or without the administration's priority on environmental justice, right? And so I do want to share that with the audience, that we are very also, want to make sure that we stay where we people understand that we stay where we can, like and if someone comes at us like that, we're gonna say no, because we understand the motives behind it.
Not going to sacrifice the integrity of the operation.
Exactly.
Because that just ruins the validity of the stories and
so
the
sometimes
lives you're trying to save.
Yeah. And sometimes they might seem like, they don't want to work with it. It's not that. It's just,
we want to work with you. Come alongside us and invest
come alongside and stand behind us and support, and do this with us. Go and get on the roof. I get on roofs to put them up, put on a suit tomorrow and be I was in DC this week, on the ethylene oxide, because we have these facilities here and we want a strong relation. So I'm on the ground. I'm on the, so if it's not like I'm just here speaking. I'm not speaking like someone that's just talking about it. I've been about it. I've been doing this.
Yeah.
I lived it. So what I'm talking about is stuff that I've done and built to advance some of this, me and a lot of other allies across the country. And so when we think about some groups, like, this is why we need to go, but have you actually been impacted? Have you actually been once at the fence line? Have you actually been doing the on the ground work? All this community-led research that needs to be done to move policy, because a lot of times the politicians look at academic research or these big organizations that they go to, but the people that are there, but they are not talking about the real impacts because they're not being impacted. And so for us, it's very important to have that holistic approach. And how do we move stuff forward? I feel like I've talked a lot, but
this is why I had you here. This is why, and I know we have to wrap up. I want to honor our time together. I guess just as like another component that has been resonating in my heart is this idea that, this is a safe space podcast for folks who are spiritually inclined. If you aren't, that's fine. Like I said, I still have plenty of friends who are atheists, but have very much like spiritual values and how they understand, the sacredness of humans, sacredness of land. And we were kind of talking at the beginning of the show that, like, it's a self-interest fight. It is like when we're trying to save our environment, where it is a collective understanding that it's not just for beautiful spaces and healthy plants and trees. It's also, we know that it's self-care for us as well. And I just think that there's just also that beautiful relationship when we understand that symbioticness, that, wow, this land is sacred. And for me, I'm a very outdoorsy and I like to spend time with nature. And, I don't know, I just even learned recently that, sunflower plants, I didn't know that Chernobyl, in the decades following after the aftermath, that planted thousands of these sunflower plants because they literally help absorb toxins and they hold it in their stems. And just something powerful about that like this simple plant, what a magical, powerful it has to be able to help us as humans and other animals to be able to take those toxins and hold it for us. And can't put all the reliance on them, but we shouldn't have these toxins and chemicals. But just to me, that just like, wow, what a magical world we live in. Why not save it? Why not thrive in it? And why not celebrate it together instead of destroy it?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That respect for the land, for Mother Earth, is so important. This is also something that is grounded in the organizing, in the environmental justice organizing that we do, right? Because we can't live without it, right? We can't live without the sun. We cannot live without water. We can't live without the air. Yet, those people are profiting off our air, off our sun, and off our water, of everything, And so, to your point, I just wanted to add this real last point, like the connection to the land that we have as families of immigrants and indigenous, indigenous heritage that I also have, is so important because, a lot of us come as immigrants and we are ready to till the land and do something for the land, you know, and whether we want to or it's like hard labor, but we have that knowledge already because it's already embedded in us. But yeah, I think that's something that, you know, it grounds me, you know, just understanding that the land is what we're protecting, the land beneath us. I mean, there shouldn't be contamination anywhere. We shouldn't be dealing with any of this, right? But, you know, like my hat says, oil money out, people power in, right? It's like that is what we want, right? Ensuring that the communities and the people are front and center in all decision making, because without that, you know, it's getting worse. It's getting worse, you know. And sometimes we think about how do we save the whole, you know, just try to save one community at a time. Stay focused. You know, and it doesn't mean we're gonna have a big. You never know, right? We're working towards that. We want to do something, you know. We're gonna, and we're not just doing this just to like be out there like protesting. Like, I know we're actually doing the on the ground designing what that next that infrastructure should look like, you know. So we're also looking at that. But what I did want to share about, you know, that sunflower thing is so important because, and I don't want to. I think this will take away from the importance, the beauty of that, but it doesn't. You know, we did a study once on water, and you know, like you said, the sunflower gets all these toxics, and you know, in the Colorado rivers, there's been a lot of mining for a lot of like heavy metals, uranium, and whatever, a lot of like toxic metals, and it gets into the waterways. We did a study around on water. It's called a perchlorate study, and we found that cactus, we call them nopales in Spanish. Nopales, you know, it's the tradition. A lot of like a cultural, you know, speaking that a lot of Latino or Hispanic or Mexican, Chicano, you know, we're not a race, right? So it's hard, you know, and I don't want to exclude anyone if I did, you know, but is that this is stuff that my grandma would make it with homemade tortillas. I would eat this. But when we did this study, these plants also have the ability to suck everything from the water. So they're able to suck all these elements, right? All these toxics. And what does that mean to our families too, right? That eat this stuff, you know? So, you know, this is kind of like the fun stuff, just to throw something out there. Right. So when I go to the store and I say, hey, where did you get those nopales from? They tell me, oh, we brought them from like, you know,
there's probably actually heavy metals in that.
So, yeah. But what, I don't want to like scare the audience on this one, but it just, you know, all those things, like you said, it has a connection to the land. If they're all here like symbiotic to do something for the land to protect us.
What we put into it, so eventually come back. So
if that cactus is there to suck all of it, yeah, we eat it. But if there wasn't any of that, then, you know, I'd feel better eating it. No, I really want to eat it after we did that study, you know. But they're good, you know. But it's all those little things that we take for granted, that we don't think about. That we have a lot of our familias have worked the land, you know, whether it's not us, whether it wasn't just us or our grandparents or my migrant grandmother that came from Mexico to follow the crops, you know, in California, follow the grapes, follow the lettuce and all those things, you know. Like, another thing I don't need is, this is some funny stuff, I don't eat lettuce. And I'll tell you why I don't eat lettuce. Because it has this distinct odor, the iceberg lettuce specifically. The other ones out, but the iceberg I just can't, because I always get this like I can smell the pesticides applicated to them. Oh, wow. And that's just something that's, you know, everybody has their thing, right? So I just want to share that.
That's basically a trauma response. Like, when I was sprayed as chemicals as a kid, like I was near.
And then I would see the trucks going with all the cabinet and get this smell, you know, it smells greenish, but it also knowing that it was sprayed and it's just a strong smell of not pure, just iceberg lettuce. I don't add it to. Right. Somebody invites me, you want a burger? No, none of that.
Well, I'm kind of a low-key hypochondriac, so now you have thoroughly scared me from buying anything in the grocery store.
No.
I'm really glad I have a CPAP machine now, because I probably need that air circulation, that filter, the filtration. Yeah. No.
But that's just my thing, you know. That's just me, you know. That I'm not saying that.
I feel cancer growing right now.
No. You're okay. That's just my thing, right there. No, but the lettuce, and everybody like, why didn't you like it? And then my partner tells people, he doesn't like it because of that. But, you know, we all have our thing, right? And that's one of those.
Hey, thanks for sharing your story with us, because I know, like, it's heavy stuff, and I know it informs and motivates everything that you're about, all the publications you've been involved in, the data you're collecting. Like, just thanks for being open and vulnerable, sharing, because I know that that's like a heavy thing to have to carry since childhood. To share, and it's important to recognize that like you're not the only one, and that hopefully for other listeners, people that share this out or whatever, that like this is still going on. There are still kids right now who are getting sprayed with chemicals. Every
day people are working on the land and moving that fertilizer at ground level, the ones that put the food on our tables, right? The farm workers, that is like, sometimes we don't think about that, but they are the ones literally also at the fence line, because there's still enough protections for them in the workplace. Man, I can get into the slaughterhouse, I can take to CAFO, I can get to all that, but
sure,
but I really
staying
appreciate
focused on
I really, I mean, some of the organization around that too, but this has been a pleasure, joining you here, and thank you for inviting me. And I just want to say for the audience, we work at the level, at the policy, at the state level, but also identify where we put all our energy, right? If it's at the state or at the local or even at the federal. So I don't want to dismiss that when we're advocating for everyone, all the communities, because one chemical in our area here, like for example, in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas, can literally take out our communities, because we live by that industrial corridor down there. There's no protections in place, no risk management plan in place. There's no notification system when a disaster happens. We just had a fire down in the East Bottoms a couple of days ago. Even though it was a pallet facility, the impacts to health from that smoke and the added pollution in the area, and then just that day, when you think about pallets, it's just wood, right? But no, a lot of those woods, they set other stuff on top of it that have hazardous chemicals. So don't want to, I'm not trying to scare people, but I wanted to just share that a lot of our advocacy is also ensuring that we are looking for protections for our communities on both sides of the state line, whether it's by where our allies are at Revit in Pendleton Heights, or our allies at the neighborhood Ivanhoe Council, or the Casey tenants. Like, all of this stuff is so important to us, like the intersectional stuff. We might not be directly diving on the housing issue, but we are very involved in that and advocate for those same things, and the regulations to support a lot of those efforts, for different levels. But there's a lot of great groups out there doing good things. Casey Tenants is a good example of a good group. Revit in Pendleton Heights is a really amazing group, really looking out for all refugees, immigrants, Latinos, that come here and that are here. And then, because of lack of representation, do not have the access to things, don't have the resources. So, I just want to throw a shout out to them and El Centro in Wyandotte. They're amazing organization that's been around for a long time. And there's many others,
And that's why, kudos to you all, because like I said, it's easy to start getting distracted and try to be involved in this, and then it's like, well, we focus on this, and as a network, hopefully together we are coming at these intersectional pathways to increase everyone's quality of life. Because then at the end of the day, we realize if we have environmental health standards up, and we have housing issues, we have access to healthy food, all these different things. Guess what? Everyone benefits. Exactly. Everyone thrives. Exactly. And that's the world we want to create. Beto, thanks for being here. Would you mind sharing just some, the website links where folks can come find you, how they can get involved, if there's sign up,
Yeah, so you can visit our if you go to our website, is the URL is cankc.org. If you go to the site right now, it's going to say under construction, but our environmental and climate justice organizing never stops. You're going to see that because we're updating our website at the moment. But you can also follow us on Instagram at CleanAirNow. What is that? The little thing. And then
the
EJ.
dash or the underscore?
The underscore EJ. Underscore. There you go. The CleanAirNow underscore EJ and Instagram. You can also follow us on Twitter at MOK. So capital M, small O, capital K, A-N, and then capital C-A-N. So MoCan. And on Facebook, it's also at CleanAirNow_EJ. So
awesome. Thanks, man, for being here and sharing about Clean Air Now.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the cool goodies here, the bottle and the stickers and stuff. Y'all need to sign up and probably show up to some actions, get some cool stuff too from them. I'm sure Beto's got a car.
If they want to show up, also on our website, we do have, I think the button that says membership, or, membership is basically just to be updated on things that are happening. And like I said, we're working on our website right now. So it should be up soon.
cankc.org.
Yes. Thank you.
And thanks for all tuning in for Pray for Micah podcast. If y'all can, share your review of the show, leave 5 stars, do all the things that make the internet algorithms happy. Smash that like button, subscribe to the notifications. Really appreciate you all supporting our work and our guests and the initiatives and the profound pathways that they're on. And so till next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for the Pray for Micah podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review, and check out my YouTube channel and follow me on social media. Pray for Micah Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We'll see you next time.
You are now re-entering the normal world.